Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio. Your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
If your body were a business, would you invest in it? It seems like business owners don't wait for something to happen to make a change. They have a lot of metrics. They look at things, trends, etc., and they are very proactive in what they do. But we have that option. We have the technology, we have the knowledge, we have the wisdom, a lot of things we have, but we just don't quite do the same thing. We don't run our bodies like we run a business. And you don't have to be a business owner. You can be a worker bee and still have the same thing. You know, you go into a restroom at your company and there's no toilet paper or there's no soap, there's whatever. You tell somebody, it gets fixed. If something's broken, your computer, the IT people come by. In other words, you're proactive to get something fixed that's broken, or if something's not working right, you're telling somebody. But when it's our body, it's not quite the same thing. Anyway, I'm RedOLaughlin. I'm a researcher. I research the human body at the cellular level, chemically speaking. I look for cause and effect relationships. Treat a cause, fix a problem, treat symptoms, and you'll always be treating symptoms. And I am really focused on aging and longevity. And I just wrote a book called Aging Sucks. It's not a health book. It's not an anti-aging or longevity book. It's a book about how do you know what's going on in your body with regard to aging. There are several things that happen at the molecular level that we cause ourselves, and we also cause the ability of our bodies to fix those problems. But it's not difficult. But again, these programs like today's show are for awareness and education. If you're watching today's show on YouTube, please seriously consider subscribing to the USA Global TV and Radio Network and Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Really and truly appreciate that. But our bodies, you know, we should be treating them like a business. Let me go ahead and get my first slide lined up here. And okay, so just a little bit bigger. Okay, there we go. So if I'm looking at my body, would I invest in it as if it were a business? If I had the ability to take my body and say, okay, here's a body, me, incorporated, whatever it may happen to be, and I wanted to say, I have some investors over here that have some money. Would they invest in me? Well, that's part of the thing we're going to talk about today. Why and why not? You know, a business owner, they're always looking at trends. They're always looking at risks. They're looking at how much reserves they have, what they need to fix, what the environment is doing to them. Those things keep going on all the time. But we humans, we generally wait for something to happen, and then we take action. Even though there might be a lot of preliminary things to say something's going wrong, we wait. So if I look at and try to compare a well-run company against, let's call it a well-run human. You know, in a company, you got performance measurements, you're watching the trends, you're identifying risks, you perform your preventive maintenance, you're doing all sorts of stuff. You're protecting your assets, you're maintaining your reserves, you're investing in the future, you're correcting problems as they come up. You have audits all the time, as whether you do it yourself or somebody outside your company does it. But when we look at our own selves, you know, have we been maintained properly? Are we deteriorating? Do we have a maintenance history of any kind whatsoever? Do we know what our liabilities and our risks are? You know, what kind of functional reserve do we have? are we really planning for a future capacity? Are we able to do things 10, 15, 20 years from now that we're doing now with the same level of effort, strength? Um, do you have any improvements planned? You know, now you say, well, how can you improve a human? Well, there are a lot of ways out there, and sometimes you have the same thing in a company. I said, what's preventive maintenance? Sometimes preventive maintenance may not be done in a company because they want to adjust the numbers for a quarterly report or an annual report. So they'll not invest right now, but it'll be deferred 90 days. But when we defer maintenance, it's not quite the same thing because we're not adjusting numbers. We're actually cutting into our future potential. So we have a risk, but it's not the same risk with regard to a business. We call it the same thing in a sense. We use the same words, but it's not necessarily the same thing. Um, and let's see here. When you're born, let's call it your body incorporated. That's you, whatever birth date you might happen to have. And so you look at, well, I've always eaten this way. I'm fine. Never been healthier or don't exercise, but I function pretty well as a human. I'm not worried about anything. But yesterday's performance is evidence. It's whatever it was, but it's no guarantee for the future. And that's part of our problem. We manage our health, but we manage it by avoiding, the professionals. If I was investing in something as a company owner, uh, I would be going to some professionals. I would have people come in and talk to me. Uh, and maybe some of you have a concierge doctor that you can go in and sit down and chat with them. But it's not quite the same thing because that's not our typical response to the way we're doing things. The body that we have, take a look. For me, the last time I missed an annual physical was 1967. I got a physical in 1968 for military, went in the military, essentially that 68, and had 31 years worth of aviation flight physicals, retired in 99, and I kept my annual physicals up ever since then. So 2000, I had one, and I'm scheduled for one later on this year. So I haven't missed one now in quite a few years, almost 60, I guess. But that's a maintenance history. That's a trending thing. And you take a look at one of the few questions the doctor asked: do you lose weight? Do you gain weight? Okay, you're up 3 pounds. Nobody cares. You're lost 16 pounds. Did you purposely do that? That's a question they'll ask. Well, why? Because cancer and other things that's one of the symptoms that they have for that. Your blood pressure. Is it trending upward? Is it okay? Did you ever start a new exercise program? How long did it last? What kind of effects? What evidence do you have that it was working? Um, I tell people a lot for the last 40, 50 years, listen to your body. Especially when I'm out running with other people, oh, this is hurting or that's going on or this, whatever. Or even here at the house, you're super tired. Well, maybe you need to go to bed early. Your body's talking to you just like your body's listening to you all the time. Everything you eat, every exercise, you walk, sleep, every stressful day, your body is listening. And not only listening, it's hearing. And that's another aspect of listening that we don't really pay attention to much. Sometimes we listen, but we don't hear. And so our body is not only listening, it's hearing. And so we look at, the stresses we have in our life. We're stressed, we eat comfort food. What are our relationships like? Sometimes you have a great relationship with somebody, maybe not sometimes, coworkers, bosses, whatever it may happen to be. But if I wanted to invest in my body, your body incorporated, uh, would I not invest because of its performance, because it has zero liabilities or hasn't been depreciated? From a business perspective, if I take that same mindset and look at it and say, maybe I really need to do the due diligence I have to do in order to say, where am I at today? Where am I going and why? Because those are the questions that need to be answered to say, where are you today and what's really important? So let's take a look at this as it applies to our body. If I have successful business issues there on the left-hand side, assets, expenses, cash reserves, risk management, key performance indicators there at the bottom. Now, those are all things that if I wanted to look at successful things in my body, what would I be doing? Well, my assets, obviously my structure, my muscles, bone, my brain, my heart, my ability to get around, my resources. What am I eating? Oxygen I'm breathing, the exercise I'm producing. How fast do I recover? What are my expenses? What are the demands on my body? All of those things are there. I talk about damage exceeding our repair capability equals aging. And when that happens over and over and over again, now you're getting into an area of accelerated aging and an increased risk of disease. So we want to keep that repair capacity in our body higher than the accumulated damage. And so that's part of what we're doing as far as having a really good, healthy body, is keeping our repair capability high. Because every second of every day, every cell in your body is being attacked. And our body responds very, very nicely. But the response is through sleep. That is where, in your deep sleep, that is where your body makes repairs. And so that is probably one of the most critical things you have. But exercise, nutrition, recovery, all those things are part of the maintenance thing. Your reserve capacity, your lifestyle choices, all of those things matter. So we want to take and look at what are the strategic equivalents. Well, the optimization that we have for our products, our operations, our controls. What are we doing to extend our life in a healthy manner? Uh, but if you're not tracking anything, you don't know where ground zero is. What's going on? That's part of our problem. We don't track anything. So do you have metrics? Yeah, you step on the scale. Well, there are scales nowadays that will tell you 15, 20 different things that are going on in your body. Are you measuring regularly? If you only step on the scale once a month, is that adequate? Probably so, if you're maintaining a pretty decent weight. But a lot of us don't. We step on the scale every day. I'm a pound down from yesterday, a pound and a half higher today, and getting a little frenzy over. So we really need to know, what are we tracking and how often. Um, we can have diabetes. We could have a risk of falls. People say your legs are one of the first things to go. Well, your legs don't have the strength they used to have. Okay, now we have a problem, because you now are at a higher risk of falls and fractures. And the fractures are a risk of poor bone maintenance over time. It's not something you can fix overnight, but it's one of those risks that you have. What if you fell and now you broke a leg? In fact, a friend of mine from years ago, she had her photo on her Facebook page showing her leg in a cast. She was in the garage, tripped over her dog, and boom. And so if you're owner of a company and all of a sudden now you're in bed for 3 weeks, that's loss of independence, is loss of your company business to a degree. But hypertension, your gut issues, your cardiovascular health, your brain health, your emotional health, your mental health, all of those things go into running your business as a human. Okay, if I want to look at aging, and I mentioned just a minute ago when damage exceeds repair, and I'm talking about accumulated damage, not just the damage this moment or this hour, but I'm talking about accumulated damage over time. Uh, our bodies have the ability, through our sleep, through our nutrition, through our recovery programs, to make the repairs that are needed. But you have to give it the nutrition, you have to give it the recovery, and you need to give it the quality sleep that it demands. But the same things that give you that, your lifestyle choices, will provide you, sleep, nutrition, stress management, exercise. If they're not balanced the way they're supposed to be, and I call this thing your Goldilocks zone. You have a normal curve. There's a certain part of that curve that, if you're in that curve, yeah, you're maintaining pretty good repair. But if you're off to one side too little, or off to the other side too much, just like Goldilocks, the bed was too hard, too soft, or just right. We want to be in the just right zone. But when our stress is too much, our metabolism is not working right, we end up with excess toxins. Now our biological demands exceed our cellular repair capability, and we have a problem. And again, your body's always listening. It's never deaf to what's out there. It's responding. You have something happen out there, it's an automatic program. Boom, it's happening. And the same thing, you do something right, the body's going to listen and respond to that correct thing that's being done. So if I wanted to start looking at a balance sheet, we talk about in business, we have balance sheets, profit and loss statement. how would you apply that to your body? Well, from a profit perspective, I'd be looking at, well, how is my muscle mass, my bone density? Well, you step on one of those smart scales, it's going to tell you that. It may not tell you your cardiovascular capacity, but it will tell you a lot. Uh, I was, let's see, this is about 7 years ago, 8 years ago, had a physical, and my doctor says, have you ever had a complete cardiovascular workup? I said, only in the military and EKG and stuff. He said, no, he says, like an echocardiogram or a nuclear stress test. I said, nope, I've never had that. So he says, let's get a baseline. So we got a baseline, and about 3 years later, he says, let's just do a quick check, see what's going on. And somewhere in about 3 years, I went from having a cardiovascular, no problems, to having a problem. And part of it was caused by Agent Orange when I was in Vietnam. But that Agent Orange is, from a veteran's perspective, a presumptive cause. So I was over there and I was exposed, and I have this kind of disease down the road. They're going to say, I don't need any proof. The mere fact you were there, that's good enough for me. They've had so many studies over the years that they're not even worth spending another nickel, a dime, or an hour's worth of time trying to prove or disprove something. So I don't know that I had exposure to Agent Orange, but I was certainly over there for so many months off and on in various bases that had that capability. I found out the other day from a guy, he was with the B-52 outfit in Guam, and they were apparently using the same chemical to keep the weeds between the bunkers down, so there was no fires and things. And again, nobody knew about it at the time, but as you start, do research and people here, there, and yonder, all sorts of things pop up. But anyway, I just had a nuclear EKG, earlier this year, and I'm having an echocardiogram tomorrow morning. And so it's one of those things I keep up with. But where were you, 5 years ago? Do you have a baseline to say, what your cognitive function is, your immune, competence? We pretty much know what our mobility is, but do we know what our physiological reserve is? I, kind of equate that to my immune response. Am I keeping my immune system as topped off as I possibly can? If I look at the other side of the ledger, the liabilities, profit and loss, what kind of damage am I accumulating? Okay, I have accumulated damage. That's happening all the time. But if my repair capacity exceeds that, I really don't have a worry. But I have things that happen all the time. Talked about acute inflammation. Those are things, I go out and work out at the gym, or I do something. I'm having a trauma at some point in my body, wherever that's at, muscle, ligament, tendon. And that's a normal, stressful function that happens. It's a healthy function. That stress causes damage. Our bodies repair it. We recover. We adapt. We get stronger. But chronic inflammation is a totally different animal. It's a raging fire that's going on all over our body. It's not just a simple isolated case in a muscle group or whatever. And so that becomes an issue. Visceral fat, that's a fat not around your gut, but around all your organs. Again, that's another animal. And so when you look at your annual physical and you get a blood test, okay, here's everything. Don't have diabetes, you don't have this, your irons, all those things are there. But it doesn't tell you these things. We're talking about insulin resistance or vascular damage. Are you as strong? Can you do the same thing physically today that you did 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 months ago? A lot of things are there. Do we even know the symptoms of some of these things? Okay, maybe I have a sleep issue. Obviously, we know smoking is one of those things we shouldn't be doing. What is excessive alcohol? Well, some people say anything that is alcohol is excessive, okay? But, if you're taking a 6-pack a night of beer, maybe that's excessive. Is that one beer a problem? May or may not be. People don't know. But it's one of those things that's a controllable item. Do you really need it? So anyway, I'm approaching that 20-minute mark here in the program, and I typically have a commercial break. So I'm going to get set up for that here in just a moment, and we're going to take a quick commercial break, and I'll be right back.
What if many of the problems we associate with aging are not random? What if there are identifiable causes behind declining energy, chronic disease, and memory problems? We have been told that aging is simply something we must accept, that slowing down is normal, that growing older means growing weaker. But what if that's only part of the story? Why do some people remain active and engaged well into their later years? Why do others struggle with disease, fatigue, and declining health? What is happening beneath the surface? What processes drive aging? In Aging Sucks, researcher, educator, and author RedOLaughlin explores what researchers have discovered about why we grow older. No medical degree required, no confusing jargon, just clear explanations of what researchers have discovered about the processes that influence aging. You cannot stop aging, but understanding its causes may help you make better decisions about your health, your future, and your quality of life. Because understanding comes before action. Action creates hope. Aging sucks. End the guesswork. There is hope.
RedOLaughlin here, one Talking Heads on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. If your body were a business, would you invest in it? Simple question. That's what we're talking about today. Why do we treat businesses with a lot of extra care, but we don't necessarily do the same thing to our bodies? That's an issue. So let me get back to my slides here. That's the one. We move on. You get two people, they both fairly active. You see them off and on. And this happened several friends of mine during COVID. All of a sudden, they're no longer here, or they're in bed for an extended period of time. I have a neighbor who had extended COVID. It seemed like he was just almost never well. His reserve was zero. But you have other people, and whether they're out at 3:30, 4:30, 5:30 in the morning, walking, running, gym, doesn't matter. They take care of their body with a routine that happens all the time. And so they have that reserve that's needed there. Sometimes we take some of that reserve and invest it for future benefits. Sometimes we don't, but that's a business decision. But from a visual perspective, here I am, here's someone else. We both look about the same. But it's that reserve, that strategic reserve that we have in order to get through infections, influenza, those kinds of things that are out there. COVID's probably the best example around here, but there's other things that happen too. Loss of a job, divorce, DUI. I had a guy, one of my guys that worked for me years ago. I got a call, he's in jail, DUI. Okay, well, you could tell something was wrong when he came back to work. Obviously, the stress is there, but we all have stress. Some of us have a lot more than others. But when we become stressed, it's how we handle it. It's, reach out and grab a hold of it and not let it go. That's the bad kind of stress. So the stress is one of those ones that will eat away at that reserve you have, that emergency fund that you're hoping to have whenever you need it. And for our health, that emergency fund is typically our immune system. So if we're not taking care of our immune system by eating right, exercising, managing our stress, getting our quality sleep, those are the things, again, lifestyle choices. So let's compare this to an automobile. I think that's a pretty good example for most of us. If I have an automobile from a business perspective, I depreciate it. I take care of it. I do my routine maintenance. I lubricate it, replace things that need replacing, upgrade when I have to. But I'm monitoring what's going on. I have a little monitor it's sitting under the dashboard that's connected to my phone that tells me, okay, code 365 pops up. What does that really mean? And so I have something that allows me to monitor when I have a signal. If not, I pull in the local store, have them come out and measure it. But sometimes it's just a gas cap that's not set properly or something else. You go out to boom, fix it, it's done. But we as humans typically don't do the same thing. We wait till something actually does go wrong, even though we have trends telling us, maybe it's brain fog, maybe I can't remember this, maybe it doesn't matter what it is, it's just not the same as it was 6 months ago. I take very good care of my cars. I can't tell you the last time I sold a car or had a car for under 300,000 miles. It seemed like way back when I had one 298,000, I gave it to somebody. But the last car I had that I sold with 420,000 miles. But I do the oil changes religiously. There's some additives you can add to help extend the life of the engine. Transmission is one of those ones that you really do have to take care of the transmission. That's a fairly expensive thing. But tires, and when you start measuring things, are you getting the same miles per gallon that you got, 2 years ago? Does your car accelerate the same way? What's the appearance? Lots and lots of things that we do as active intervention for our cars. We don't think the same way for our bodies. Are we doing the right kinds of things from an active intervention perspective that we should be doing? And again, is there a right or wrong? Well, there's probably more of a right or a wrong, but what happens is historically, that's what we've always done because we're not aware of it, which is part of this program. And once you understand why something happens, you're more likely to take action than if you're just aware of it. But if you're not aware, we don't know what we don't know. That's a pretty common thing, even in business. We don't know what we don't know. Okay, COVID happened, you send everybody home to work from home. Well, some things work well, but you can't do that in a production line very easily. So there are lots of things out there. The Goldilocks zone, that's what I call it. There's a normal curve that comes down, and we've seen these things for forever and ever. The grading on the curve back in school. And that curve, and I'm not saying it's plus or minus 1 or 2 deviations, but it's a major portion of that curve. And we're in that, everything is just right. It is what we have to keep our bodies. And what are we measuring? Our lifestyle choices, our nutrition, what we eat, our meals, how often we eat them. We're talking about our exercise program. How diverse is it? Does it include stretching and flexibility and balance and all that? We're talking about how well we manage our stress. We're talking about the quality of our sleep. All of those things, when we're doing them properly, are in the Goldilocks zone. We're providing that reserve capacity, repair capacity to our body, and we're enhancing our immune function. Therefore, we're increasing our strategic reserve. But sometimes I underuse something. Okay. Coming home, sitting on the couch, you're stressed out, watch a show, have a glass of beer and a ice cream, whatever. One time it's not going to affect it. You go over to the left side, 1 or 2 times, it's not going to be an effect. Really and truly not. And the same thing with the excessive side. We're gonna go to both sides of that Goldilocks zone, but it's staying to one side or the other that is a problem. So you can deliberately do something because I have a anniversary party coming up, or my son's getting married, or whatever, or I'm going to go on a 2-week vacation and I'm just going to pig out and have a great time. In the late 90s, I lived in Germany. I worked for the military, U.S. military, and I would go down to, and I guess the mid 90s, I read 5 books on Atkins. I said, that's what I want to do. I was a little chubby, and I lost 7 inches of my waist. I lost about 40 pounds and looked good, felt good. However, with chubby Red, I could run 6-8 miles any day of the week, not even think twice about it. When I was on Atkins, my glycogen storage in my muscles non-existent to speak of. I could barely get 2 miles out, and I was absolutely run down. But because of that, I was pretty constantly on eating protein and fats and avoiding anything carbs. I was living on less than 10 carbs a day easily without any problems. And so I would leave Stuttgart, Germany. I'd go down to someplace in Italy for a weekend, easy drive, go down there, pig out on spaghetti, pasta, bread, wine. And I come back literally in 3 days, get on the scale. I gained 12 pounds in 14 pounds consistently. And this happened maybe once a quarter. I would go down and do something like that. And it would take me about 2 weeks to lose that 12 pounds because I get back on my regular routine. But that was something I operated on the excessive side with a plan. I came back, I went back into my Goldilocks zone, and boom, I got right back to where I was. And so it doesn't mean you have to stay in the Goldilocks zone. It just means that it's there. If you're aware of it, you know what has to be done. It doesn't mean you can't celebrate once or twice or 3 times. Like on Atkins, I noticed that if I had, let's say, a spaghetti meal, that's all carbs for all practical purposes, spaghetti and bread. I could have one meal like that in a couple of weeks and have no effect on gaining weight or anything else. But if I had 2 or 3, the weight starts coming back on in a vengeance. And it's basically water weight. It's not something that's actually physically there. Your body just has a tendency to store more water. So, but that Goldilocks zone is one of those things that's really and truly critical for your health. You have to know what it is so that you can keep your lifestyle choices, your lifestyle factors tuned to the right area. Okay. There's another term that I kind of coined here about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I call it the architecture of equilibrium, because I looked at the hallmarks of health, the hallmarks of aging, and I looked at how our bodies normally keep stability, whether it's through our blood sugar stability or other hormones. The body has a lot of self-correcting mechanisms. So I have my self-correcting mechanisms. I have a lot of things are going on. But when I look at this thing, okay, it's this here or there, and then sometimes you end up with a cascading issue that the final result is what you end up treating, but the cause is over here somewhere else. And I'm saying maybe this whole thing belongs in one overarching structure that defines how these things all interplay with each other. If I look at the 12 hallmarks of aging, if I happen to chronic inflammation, well, if I happen to push that part, think of that being one little tab on a spider web. You push that tab, that whole spider web wiggles, and you start getting other things happening. So just because one goes out, now all of a sudden your whole system is reacting according to that one. So now maybe mitochondrial dysfunction happens. Maybe some other functions of aging are also causing, because one is activated, it kind of wakes up everybody else and says, hey, come to the party. And the same thing with our repair. We have the ability to activate several aspects of our repair. And so the architecture of equilibrium is a term that I've been using lately to define that. But in the inside, my Goldilocks zone, that's my operating envelope. That's where I want to be. Outside of that's my P&L statement, my damage to ratio. How much damage is occurring that my repairs take care of? And then the overall arching thing is, am I running my body like a business? And that's kind of what this is showing. So if I can do this properly, I should be able to have a decent amount of reserve, so if something happens to me physically, emotionally, mentally, I ought to be able to get through it. Okay, I am the chief operating officer. The moment you're born, you have you incorporated. That's, and when I look at what's wrong, I usually go to my doctor, my pharmacist, whatever. There's a lot of people I can go to, AI, and AI is actually pretty good about giving you some information. It doesn't want to give you the diagnosis of a problem, and sometimes you can get around that. I work with my AI a lot at the molecular level of the body, what's going on, and it understands that I'm looking at from a research perspective, not from a personal diagnostic perspective. But as I get something in there that looks interesting, okay, well, what causes that? What else is happening? So you, as the CEO of your company, your body, you should be using the experts around you to ask questions. Sometimes your doctor's hard to get a hold of, but the pharmacist is generally pretty easy. You may have to wait in line 10 or 15 minutes, but you have a problem with, I've talked to my pharmacist quite a few times. 10 years ago, I was on absolutely no meds whatsoever. Nowadays, I'm on more than I care to think about. But if something's there, I say, okay, fine. What about this? And, they'll look it up, or they know from whatever. And so there's a lot of people out there with good information. Again, you're the CEO, make informed choices. Make those decisions based on something that there's evidence for. Some things you cannot outsource. You're the ultimate responsibility for you. And then, kind of things is business. Where are you going to be in 10, 15, 20 years? If you're going to be retired on an island out in the Caribbean, are you prepared for that and everything else for that? Or are you just going to be sitting in a retirement home and having somebody change your diaper, a couple, 3 times a day? It's just a lot of things that we have control over now, we just don't think about. So if I look at trying to draft some kind of future plan for my body, what does a successful business have for a 5-year plan? Should I have something similar to that for my body? I think absolutely. What are the things we're doing now that are still relevant? Do we have competitive advantages, that we should be taking a look at? Our strengths and our weaknesses. Sometimes they say, work on your weaknesses, but sometimes you need to work on your strengths too, because sometimes those strengths have a tendency to disappear over time. How adaptable are you? You know, is your body sustainable? Do you have that reserve you need? How good is your recoverability? And that's probably one of the key factors that we talk about nowadays is how fast do you recover? I can remember way back when you have a cold, 2, 3 days later, you're fine. Then you get a little bit older, that cold lasts for 2 weeks. And then you get a little bit older and it seems like you can't get rid of it for a month. And that's kind of that recoverability. So we look at where are we today? Where are we going? What are we measuring? How consistent are we measuring it? Are we making changes that need to be made? And so those are things. If you haven't had a physical in 5 years, maybe that's time to think about. But if I'm going to enjoy retirement, am I going to be doing it with a walker? I don't know. Those are things we need to think about. So when you start getting down to the end of your comparing yourself to a business, you may not ever have been a business owner, but there's a lot of YouTube videos. There's a lot of AI sources. There's just a lot of stuff out there that says, and just go to Google. What would tell me a 5-year plan for a business that bakes cakes or walks dogs? It doesn't have to be a major automobile manufacturing company. It's just a small independent mom and pops restaurant business. What do they have to do in order to stay in business, and how can I apply that to me? What are the things they're doing? Well, audits, inventory, lots of things. So those are things that I think if you start looking at your mindset just slightly differently than you did before, then you'd probably be in that realm of, I'm starting to think more like a business person to take care of my body, in which case I'm actually going to make decisions sooner than waiting for something to happen. And I'm going to leave you with that thought and kind of wrap things up for today. So please have fun, enjoy, stay safe, and don't let anybody steal your joy, actually. So take care of you all. Catch you all shortly. Bye now.
What if many of the problems we associate with aging are not random? What if there are identifiable causes behind declining energy, chronic disease, and memory problems? We have been told that aging is simply something we must accept, that slowing down is normal, that growing older means growing weaker. But what if that's only part of the story? Why do some people remain active and engaged well into their later years? Why do others struggle with disease, fatigue, and declining health? What is happening beneath the surface? What processes drive aging? In Aging Sucks, researcher, educator, and author RedOLaughlin explores what researchers have discovered about why we grow older. No medical degree required, no confusing jargon, just clear explanations of what researchers have discovered about the processes that influence aging. You cannot stop aging, but understanding its causes may help you make better decisions about your health, your future, and your quality of life. Because understanding comes before action. Action creates hope. Aging sucks. End the guesswork. There is hope.
Every great story begins with a vision. At USA Global TV and Radio for years, we've been providing world-class education, entertainment, inspiration, imagination, connections, and hope. Most people don't stay to watch the outro or the credits, but it's the people behind every success, behind every breakthrough, and behind every unforgettable story who matter. The TV show hosts, our guests, our sponsors, our publicists, our production team, our distribution team, our search engine optimization team, and so many more. You're the ones who make the difference. Every great story belongs to the people who bring it to life. Our future looks bright at USA Global TV and Radio. And that's because of you, our loyal fan base all around the world in more than 60 countries. Together, we're making a difference because you matter. USA Global TV and Radio, live streaming to over 60 countries. Voiceover, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Video production and direction, Paul Garcia. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV and Radio on YouTube.
How much of your value have you been giving away? Saying yes when the answer should have been no? Lowering your price to secure the opportunity? Giving more while receiving less? Over time, it adds up. Until one moment brings clarity, you've been giving away your value. This is not about working harder. This is not about doing more. It's about boundaries. It's about pricing. It's about respect. From Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck comes a direct and necessary message. Stop over-delivering. Stop underpricing your expertise. Stop negotiating against yourself. Because when you recognize your value, everything changes. Stop giving away your value. Boundaries, pricing, and the business of respect. Available now wherever fine books are sold and on Amazon. A film by USA Global TV and Radio. Executive producer Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Videographer and cinematic production Paul Garcia. Voiceover by Ed Wargas. Stop giving it away. Start owning it.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honored to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.